So today I'm going to talk to you about Power Packed PR for your care home. That's Power Packed PR for your care home, using a system whereby for any one particular good news story for your care home, you're going to get positive media exposure. That's journalists writing positively about your care home or care homes, and also how you're going to tweak that good news story that you yourself have pitched as a separate Facebook post that will encourage engagement and reach thousands of people as opposed to dozens or 100 or hundreds of people. So this is Power Packed PR, and I really urge you to watch this video because I'm going to give you a real life example of how this Power Packed PR system works. And this is a system whereby if you put it in place for your care home, you can reach between 50 and 120,000 people per year using just, let's say, 6 good news stories for your care home, which you are going to make sure that journalists write positively about you, and you are going to tweak and modify for a separate Facebook post that will encourage engagement. So this is a system which you must be thinking about if you want to promote your home and ultimately get more inquiries. And what I'm going to do is provide a real life example by sharing my screen, so please stay tuned. So here's the first element of the Power Packed PR for your care home. It's a good news story drafted up as a news release. And this is a real life example of a draft news release. It was eventually signed off, and it's something that probably happens in many of your care homes right now. It's one of the residents celebrating her 100th birthday and how the care home staff supported her. But the important element here is we've written this news story on a plate. That's what I mean by that. In this case, it was 424 words, but literally, we've written the story on a plate for the target journalist. That means that they've got everything that they need as a story for them to publish it in their paper and online. So that includes, obviously, the details about how the home supported this particular resident called Betty as she celebrated her 100th. But importantly is that we got the full backstory for Betty about her life, and this includes everything about her family life, about when she moved to the area, and about her time everything from at school and what work she did, and who she married, and as I mentioned, her family life, and the fact that she actually had a love for fashion, and that's how the home supported her as she marked her 100th birthday. And there was also quotes from, in this case, the manager of the home, and also in this case, although we didn't get it, you can secure quotes from the resident herself. In fact, of course, we did have quotes from the resident herself, Betty, as she gave the secret to her long life, which was everything moderation, except for clothes shopping. So again, we brought the story to life by getting quotes from the resident. Sometimes we can get quotes from the resident's family. 90% of the time they are delighted to be involved. And of course, what we did here is get a good headline on this news release. It's always important to catch the attention of journalists who you're pitching to, and this headline would have gone on the email subject line of the email where the news release was included in order to catch their attention. And also, as you'll see in a moment, we've got a great crop of editorial photos. So what was the result of this news release? Here we go. We had a full page. And why we were able to get a full page, well, as I mentioned, we had the story, there it is, on a plate for the journalists. In fact, they pretty much wrote everything as we had written it. So that's what I mean, story on a plate for your target journalist. And there's a great crop of editorial photos. Staff here with Betty, here as well. And also, as I mentioned, we included the backstory for this particular resident, Betty, and here you have an archival photo of her, Betty Pratchett, as a young woman. So through this system and process, we were able to get a full page coverage, and this, as I mentioned, would have gone online as well. So this paper would have perhaps had a circulation of 5,000, 10,000, sometimes even 15,000. So that's the number of potential people you are reaching. So that's the first element of the Power Packed PR for your care home. The second element, as I mentioned, is using that exact same story but tweaked and modified as a separate Facebook post. So you wait for that media to cover that story, and then you're going to tweak it appropriately to endeavour to get maximum engagement and power as a separate Facebook post. Now let's remember, Facebook is different to pitching to journalists. Here, of course, we were pitching a story to journalists for journalists to write, but here the aim is to encourage Facebook engagement. And what we did here, therefore, was add this headline, "Want to know the secret to a long life," onto the headline of the Facebook post. Now, this is friends sharing with friends. So you are going to capture people's attention with that kind of headline. Everyone wants to know the secret to a long life. And then we tweak the story, as I mentioned, to ensure that all the highlight details of that original story that we put together were here. Want to know the secret to a long life? Here's what fashion fan Betty said was her secret to reaching a The second element is to use that exact same story as a separate Facebook post. But what you have to think is that Facebook is different to pitching to journalists to cover your care home story. So let's remember, here the aim was to get journalists to write positively about you by pitching them a great story. And the result is here. When we're looking at Facebook, Facebook is a different medium where the aim is for you as a friend to share a post which will be picked up and engaged with your friends on Facebook. So that's the mechanism for Facebook. So how can you maximize the PR value and promotional value of this news story on Facebook? Well, remember, as I mentioned, Facebook is a platform where friends share with friends. So you have to think about the headline that you will be adding in order to capture your attention of the friends who you might be wanting to engage with on Facebook. So here's the post as we put it on Facebook. It's "Want to know the secret to a long life." That was the headline that we put on this particular post, but the rest of the story, the details of which we'd already got here, we then tweaked and wrote in an engaging way on Facebook. Want to know the secret to a long life? Of course, everyone does, do they not? So that's how we captured people's attention on Facebook, and then detailed about how fashion fan Betty said her secret was to everything in moderation except for clothes shopping. So you see a subtle difference here between pitching a story for journalists and using that exact same story but as a Facebook post. And by the way, we actually only used this as a Facebook post once the story had been covered in the media. So, and the rest of this post covers details, as I mentioned, that we have already got about how she was supported at the Old Vicarage Care Home during her birthday, and details about her, about Betty, and about the day, and again about her backstory. So we created interesting facts, and a little mini story as a separate Facebook post. And again, we had a great set of editorial photos which we already used and have been used by the media, but don't forget, they are our photos, they're the care home's photos, so you can use them as you wish. And note the power of emoticons. That emoticons really do make a difference as a Facebook tool, so use them to your advantage. And you can see how we've used them on this particular post. And then what are the numbers? Well, here you go. 9,000 people reached, 1,458 engagements. Well, how are people interested? How are people engaging? Well, 33 comments. They were congratulating Betty on her birthday. And that's how, for this particular story, we secured engagement and therefore reach. So 9,000 people reached. We're looking at between 5,000 and 15,000 for the news story published in the papers. So you're becoming 10,000 people plus through that one particular deliverable. And again, doing the numbers, you do 6 of those a year. We're looking at between 60 and 120,000 people who you'll be aiming to reach using this power-packed PR system. So, power-packed PR, how that works. This was a real-life example, and I hope it helped. So, if you like this video, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more videos like it.